Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a second submission by Karli of her horse Petri. Now, she started this horse back last year and then moved to this new barn where she is, and she said it took a while for the horse to adjust. And then the horse got injured in a pasture and had some time off, and she's been back walking the horse and just starting to trot the horse after about 6 or 8 weeks. So, having said all that, what I would say is I think you're really right on track and you get this horse to a really good place by the end of it. So, without any further ado, let me say you're doing a great job on this, and where you get to at the end is really where you want to be, and she really gets nicely over her back even in the trot, so good work here. So here she's starting to stretch pretty nicely, and as you said, she's a little hard to bend to one side. Well, as we see her here in silhouette, as we see the horse walking away, that is, we see the flank of the horse, and we can see how distended this horse's flanks are. In other words, she looks a bit like a pregnant mare, so her back is still dropped, and we can see that, her belly is still quite dropped, and we see her in silhouette. We can see that while she's, got quite a bit of a nice flesh across her top line there's still a little bit of a dip where the back was falling away from the hip bone there, from the hips there, so to speak. So she's still got a ways to go there, but where you're getting to here is certainly the right place, and if you just continue doing it, all the rest of your problems are going to disappear. Once again, remember when we talk about bending a horse has to be longitudinally bent. That is, it has to lift its back before it can bend from side to side freely. That's why, until we get that done on a horse, they always feel very one-sided, stiff to one side and hollow to the other side. So that's why we have to get them working over the back first, and that's all we concentrate on, instead of frustrating ourselves trying to teach a horse, or to force a horse into bend, for instance, by forcing their head into corners and things like this, as I see so many trainers telling people to do. And then, of course, when you do that, you totally lose the rhythm of the horse, so the exercise you're performing has no value. But the exercises you're performing here are going to have a lot of value, and you're really getting to a wonderful place with this horse. Getting her really swinging nicely over her back. It started out a little slow, but how could you expect her to do otherwise? I mean, she still has a long way to go to come into condition. But what you're doing here now, if you can continue to do just what you're doing here, which you get this horse to the point where you're lighting it up all the way across its top line, that has to be every trainer's goal every day. And at any point that you lose that, and you recognize that you lose that, and all of a sudden you see the horse, for instance, when we start trying to push the horse into the upper levels a little bit and trying to push the envelope, we must always be sure that we're really not just shortening the horse's stride, because that's often what happens when people try to get collection. They just start pulling the horse back at them, and once again, that's the only kind of thing that you're going to get. If you're pulling the reins back at you, what could possibly happen other than the horse shortening his stride? It's like driving a car. You're basically putting on the brake, so what can you expect, so to speak? So we must let them develop into collection. Remember how that works is we get a horse strong over its top line like you're getting here till we find the spot that allows the horse to move in its optimal stride. So for this horse right there in the walk is pretty much it. We see how all the muscles along the whole top line, see how the neck, the top line muscle are lit up, so to speak. Good swing, maybe a little more. There you go. But you go from having it, really, really right on to she comes up a little bit here or there, but no big deal. You get the horse to come right back to the good place, and that's exactly what we want to do. And when we do that every day, over time, it just takes less and less time to get the horse to the good place. And then, of course, what's going to happen is you begin to see the horse lift itself up. And that's what real collection is the horse's ability to lower its hindquarters, and as it thrusts itself off the ground forward with its hind legs, it actually lifts the front end with each stride up into the air and maintains that suspended feeling. That's what gives us the wonderful feeling of a big wave carrying us around, And you ride a horse that's hollow, you never have that wonderful feeling of something really athletic. It just kind of feels like you're sitting in a hole and you're being drug along, in some kind of strange clippity-cloppity cart, Of course, now that can look very fabulous when you have a really great mover and you shorten the stride up and they have all this leg action once again. That's how people get fooled and have been fooled by some of these horses that are so fabulous movers that we've gotten kind of in so much awe of all this movement that we forgot to see, what was happening to the horses in the process. And once again, remember, whenever we separate the diagonal pairs in the trot, for instance, in a true extended trot, it extends from behind, not from in front. So for a horse to throw its front legs out, and every time you do that, the horse must go out of balance onto its forehand briefly. But when we develop horses the way we're seeing this one starting to develop, and this is really a good walk here, swinging through for this horse that it's level. This is about it could be a little faster right here, but it's getting to an optimal place. And you get the same thing in the trot. So once again, remember, if you just keep doing this, and I love how you're keeping everything you're doing to what the horse is capable of doing. Nice wide turns, keeping it in rhythm. You know, and I've been so impressed as we have begun this series of working in this way, critiquing people, you know, in these videos. It's just been so great to see all these people, you know, like Karli here, just doing this on her own, and how easily it is. As I said, you know, if you have a reasonable amount of skill on the back of a horse, that is, you're not afraid and you can comfortably walk, trot, and canter, and you know, you have your balance, and it doesn't even have to be completely independent, because your real independence will develop from riding like this. And that's what you have to understand. If you're holding against the mouth of a horse, you'll never be in balance. You're always out of balance because you're holding yourself against the mouth of the horse. So when we ride like this, we're always having to stretch up and carry our own bodies and get our weight to sink down and let our legs come down and around the horse. Because if we don't, we'll fall off, right? Because we're not holding on to anything. So unfortunately, you know, like when I was a kid, and, you know, my father would see, he'd always show me the people in Western movies that were holding on to the, and it was usually the big star in the movie, and you'd see him trot away, you know, on the horse, and he'd be hanging onto the saddle horn for dear life as the horse trotted off, you know. My father would always point those things out to me and say, and see how the person is bouncing against the stiff back of the horse. But once we just have enough suppleness that we can just go with them and we know the right things to do, the horses will just develop. It's as simple as that. It does not take a Herculean feat of strength to train a horse. If it does, you're doing something seriously wrong. When you meet riders and they tell you, and they show you how big their biceps are from riding, you know just how they've been riding, because they've been holding against the mouth of the horse. Your biceps should have nothing to do with your contact with the horse's mouth. And once again, I like how you just stop and let the horse relieve itself. You know, too often these days, and that was one thing that was also, you know, was drilled into me as a child, is, you know, you have to let horses, they need to defecate, you need to let them do it. You know, this thing of beating up horses and making them step and step. And yes, you can get them to do it, but I've seen many that became nervous over it, so to speak. So this is all really good walk here, and once again, this is going to develop beautifully if you just keep up the good work that you're doing now. I really look forward to seeing this horse in a few more months, because if you stay on track and be careful not to let the horse run around in any more pastures. And, you know, and once again, sometimes, you know, I tell people about that. You know, you want to when you turn out your horses, you don't want them to run like lunatics. You want them to go out there and relax and have a nice walk around in the grass and this sort of thing. And, you know, if they get to running around like lunatics, it's probably because they're in a panic to get back to their stall. In which cases, they're not really having fun. Some people mistake horses having fun with you know, when they see them running around there with their tails up and they're passaging around the ring and they think this is wonderful. Well, really what that usually is a horse in a panic. And when they get in a panic like that, you know, they will hurt themselves. So my rule is, you know, when it comes to turnout, is that I turn them out after they're ridden, if at all possible. And then, you know, in paddocks where they feel comfortable, and that depends on the kind of place that you have. When I had my own farm in Kentucky with, you know, 50 acres of paddocks and, you know, lots of room, they could each have a nice separated paddock, and I had the room to do that. But it's hard, depending on where you are. In California here, we're very short of grass paddocks, so to speak. So we have to do the best we can. Beautiful walk here, stretching all the way down. This is just wonderful work. And once again, just know that you don't have to trot a horse. You've done this horse. You brought this horse back exactly right. You've just walked it. And really, I would do a little more. I think just about right now is about, you know, as you said, 6 or 8 weeks when I would be thinking about bringing a horse into the trot. And once again, it would depend on the horse, you know. But if the horse still has as much belly as this horse has, and his back is sunken a little bit, you know, once again, if you can get the horse over its back in the walk, you know that the horse is developing in the walk. And if you just do enough of that, you'll be amazed at how far you could take a horse. I mean, you can really develop them a lot if you walk. Now, once again, that's very different. You will hear people talking about oh, I'm going to develop my horse by walking it up and down hills. But let me tell you, put this caveat on that. That only works if the horse is working over its back up and down the hills. If it's not working over its back up and down the hills, just like jumping fences, it's very hard on the horse's legs to go up and down a hill on a hollow back horse because they're not balanced on 4 legs. So my advice to you is keep whatever you do, as Jack Legoff used to say about jumping. Jumping is just dressage with fences in the way. Well, going up and down a hill should be the same thing. It's just a hill, in the way while you're doing dressage. So same kind of object. So keep them working over their backs all the time. It isn't something that we do and then we just cruise along and let them kind of walk along hollow. And once again, as a real rider wants to be in tune with their horse all the time and wants to be communicating with them all the time, then you're safe because then you're reading the horse and you're feeling what's going to come next. I can tell you how many people I've seen in the hunt field over the years, kind of blindly, walking along with no contact with their reins, and who soon found themselves on the ground when a turkey came out of the bushes or something like that. So, you want to always be in contact with your horse. It's not any time that if you're on it, you should be riding it, so to speak, and that you're communicating with it about what you want to have going on. You don't want to let the horse just tune out into its environment. Beautiful walk here, though. This is all really, really good. Look what a nice calm eye this horse is developing. This is so nice. But once again, you can see here she comes around close. You can see how the belly's still a little distended. There's still a little drop in that back. But you could actually get rid of all of that if you did nothing but walking. But, I'm not suggesting that you do, because I think this horse at this level is ready to trot, because obviously I've watched this, and when you get to the end of it, it gets to a really good place. So, everything here is developing right on track, and all of your other problems, once again, when the old masters used to say, well, how do you solve this problem or that problem? You just go forward, and a lot of people didn't understand forward means to engage forward under the body and round the back upwards. That's what it means to go forward. That's what the old masters meant when they talked about going forward and straight. And that's why they talked about so much about just going forward and straight with young horses, because once again, you can't bend them until you get the back to lift. So you want to keep everything pretty much in straight lines and, simple leg yields and that sort of thing until the horse gets over its back. How many horses in dressage we see today watch a lot of the upper level horses, and you'll see when they try to do a half pass, it's very telling, because many of them, all the ones that are hollow, always look like they're going to hit their legs together. They have a really hard time, and if you watch closely, you'll see how the leg almost has to do a little zigzag around the inside leg, because of course as a horse is hollow, its hips are actually kind of rotated in the opposite direction, some to a greater or lesser degree. So when they try to do a half pass, the leg has to not only come forward, it has to then come around that other leg. So watch that the next time you're watching upper level horses. And when you see the ones that swing in rhythm with no change of the stride, that's what you're looking for. Just like the difference between a working walk and a working trot. How is it different? Because it's rhythmic and the horse stays over its back throughout the exercise. So if the exercise loses the rhythm, once again, remember, it has no gymnastic value to the training of the horse. But once again, what you're doing here is going to have a lot of value to the horse. Right there. Now, you see how the horse really came through in the walk right there? That was beautiful. That's exactly what you want to feel. And when you get to that place, you can almost see now, as this horse got more relaxed, even though it's only in a walk, you can almost begin to see the wave carrying you forward, that you're not having to kick and kick and kick and kick, and you have a flow to it right there. Now, that's where you want this horse to be. Now it looks really flowing. Look how deep the step is behind. Now you can see this horse still, it looks as a little stiff-legged, and that just shows you how she hasn't connected all the way across the back. But, when, that was kind of an interesting one that went by there. So anyway, compare that and see what you think. Once again, we get deeper into that stretch. And look how this horse looks like it's flowing. It's going someplace. There's no interruption. It's water flowing down a hill. That's exactly what we want it to feel like. So we're not having, we don't have this cramped, uneasy feeling. It should always feel like this, right up through the levels. That's what real collection is. You never lose that sense of just free forward movement. Once again, a little difficulty into the trot there, but nothing bad. You handled that very well and just got her to settle back down and right into a nice trot. And once again, I'm seeing enough of a stretch here. This horse is really starting to swing nicely over its back. And I couldn't, you're at a place here with this horse that it has not developed any thrust yet. That is, it has not begun, which it can't really do. You won't see that until you see the horse lose that belly and you'll see that hole fill up behind. You'll see the withers come up through the shoulders a little bit more. And once again, remember, it takes about 1 year to 2 years for that foundational work to have the full effect, for the horse to go through the complete change that it does. And it really doesn't matter what kind of horse it is. I mean, we've done it over and over again with thousands of horses, and it seems to take about the same amount of time, before you get to that. And if you read the old masters, that's what they said. If you read the Spanish riding schools, they talked about, taking 4 years to develop a horse, And the first year they would just lunge them. We wouldn't even canter a horse for the first year of its training, which once again, if you ever seen a Lipizzaner that hasn't been trained correctly, I mean, they're the most horrible looking, out of balance things you can possibly imagine. So, they aren't like some of these modern horses that we have today. So you could really see the difference. I mean, in how they looked. I recently have seen, some Andalusians. Some Lipizzaners that have been used for Western horses and things where they've just ignored the frame of the horse and you just can't believe what unattractive horses they look like when they're not trained correctly. So once again, my point is they had to know how to do that in order to get those horses developed correctly. But look what a beautiful swinging trot you have right here. That's exactly right. That's pretty much an optimal trot for this horse at this time. Now, is the horse on the forehand? Yes, of course it is, because it hasn't begun to come up through the back yet. You haven't seen thrust, but this is what will lead to the horse having enough thrust to lift the front end into the air. Once again, by taking back against the mouth of the horse, all you do is shorten the stride. You'll never have real thrust. You can't, because the hind legs are hanging out behind someplace. But look how beautiful this whole ride has been. This has just flowed absolutely correctly. It's just so great to see people around the world just doing this with their horses. And I know that everyone who experiences this, as I did when I learned to do this, and how freeing it is and how much more fun it is to ride your horse. I mean, as I said, I see so many people riding horses, and it just seems like a pretty miserable experience for both of them. But this is absolutely lovely. And how do I know the horse? Look how relaxed it is. Its ears are totally floppy. It's stretching into the contact. Look at the top line there. You can see how the whole top of the neck muscles are all lit up. That's exactly what we want to see right there. Look how beautiful that is. That's optimal for this horse. Right there, really nice. Look how even the legs, the diagonal pairs, that is how the outside hind leg is moving with the inside foreleg, and vice versa. Swinging absolutely regularly. And when we talk about rhythm, this is what we're talking about. Rhythm means how the coordination between the front and back end. It doesn't mean a fast, like we see horses today that that are very jacked up, and they have this kind of very electrifying kind of performances where their legs are being shot out forward and all this kind of stuff. But it always has this kind of herky-jerkiness to it. It never has this flow that you see at this level of the horse, which is, I would call this a training level horse. This horse is now working over its back as opposed to one that isn't. And once you begin to know the difference, it's not hard to see. I mean, just look around you when you see the horses that are in the ring with you, and and you compare to what you're doing. I mean, I don't know how anybody actually could argue the point, and certainly anybody that's experienced riding like this. As I said, I've never met anyone that rode like this who went back to riding any other way, because it makes it so much fun for both horse and rider. And of course, then once we can let the horse balance, and once again, that's what we talk about, that rhythm is that perfect coordination between the front and back end. So when you see these horses doing these phony trots where they're throwing the front end out, watch how the hind leg is behind the rhythm of the front leg. So in riding, when we talk about rhythm, we're talking about that synchronization between the front and back end. That's pure rhythm. Otherwise, it would be like a symphony orchestra. Imagine if you had a symphony, and all of a sudden all the bassoons started playing, a half a note behind the rest of the symphony. It would sound very strange. Well, that's actually what a horse is doing that's hollow in the back. It hits that same kind of strange. And once you learn to see it, you can even hear it on the ground, And I will tell you, like, one of the greatest horsemen I've ever known in my life, Mr. John Simpson, who won the Hambletonian. He was a harness racer. And I used to go to his place in Florida, and he was blind by this time, and he trained his horses listening to the footfalls. The horses going around the track in front of him, and he listened to the footfalls and told the jockeys what they needed to do, to correct the training of the horse. So once again, it's very true of horses too. When you start to listen to that, and when they really start to work through the back, it becomes very light. Once again, it's like Indian running, so to speak, where the horses are just lifting themselves up. Just like a person running with their knees bent versus one running with their knees straight. But this horse is starting to run with its knees bent, and it's not running at all. Actually, it's swinging quite nicely. So you've really done a great job here. Everything that I see here is completely on track. And if you continue doing what you're doing, this horse will absolutely develop absolutely beautifully. So remember, once you can get all, and you said she wasn't, I think this horse is stretching, very efficiently, and you're getting some points. I mean, yes, he doesn't always stay all the way down there, but you certainly are having moments when you're getting all the way there. But even like right here, this horse is swinging very nicely over its back. And I like how you made that downward transition once again. Once again, as you see hollow horses, you see how different and what a struggle it looks like for them. And it's a struggle for the rider. Because remember, if you're trying to rise to the trot on a hollow-backed horse, if the horse is hollow, there's no thrust in the back, so there's nothing to lift you up. So if you actually had to ride a horse hollow, rising to the trot, for any kind of real distance, for instance, if you had to go out fox hunting or you had to ride from town to town for some reason, if you were Paul Revere, you would be exhausted by the time you got there because the horse couldn't sustain it, nor could you, because you're having to post against your stirrups with every stride. But look how beautiful this horse is now, just swinging actively, and how that has not stopped. And that's what we always want. It's all about that slow, deep rhythm that has that feel of relaxation to it, as opposed to this idea of tension. Remember, real impulsion is not tension at all. It has nothing to do with horses being afraid of the aids. It's not that at all. It's an expression of the horse's level of physical fitness, expressed through the back, so to speak, when you feel that flow of energy through the back of the horse. That only can happen if the back is lifted and the horse has developed physical strength to be able to do it. So once again, this is Will Faerber today, and really great job by Karli with her horse Petri. I look forward to seeing the next one. Really great job here, and I think you're right on track. Keep doing exactly what you're doing, and then maybe in a little bit of time, begin to add in some leg yields.